Brad Garlinghouse, the CEO of Ripple, may have just confirmed the strategy behind XRP and the SEC complaint. However, we have a lot to discuss about the SEC probe before we get into it. Now, Empower is the source of this. In addition to delving further into this topic, we will also examine the actual events surrounding XRP in relation to the SEC complaint. I'm Nick, and welcome to the channel, everyone. If you're new to the channel and this video is new to you, you should subscribe. Having said that, Jason Foster, the founder of Empower Oversight, made a significant news to us over the past day. The SEC Governor Inspector General's Crypto Conflicts Report, which focuses on William Hinman, is finally here. The threshold is high on the specific question of whether he committed a crime. As expected, the OIG failed to clarify a larger set of selective enforcement conflicts and concerns involving XRP and ETH. This is the real report of the investigation that was conducted on December 9th of last year. We have the actual report over here, and the executive summary, which is where we received the complaint, is precisely what we need to pay close attention to. From Empower Oversight, claiming that William Hinman, the former director of the Division of Corporation Finance, violated the Office of the Ethics Council's guidelines regarding his continued financial ties and interactions with Simpson Thacher and Bartlett LLP, his former legal practice. In particular, Empower Oversight claimed that Hinman neglected to disclose a direct financial interest in STB, a member of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, during his June 14, 2018, speech at Yahoo Finance's All Market Summit Crypto Yahoo speech. In that speech, Hinman claimed that the digital asset Ether was not a security and that he had various contacts with STB while working for the SEC. We discovered that, at the time of his onboarding at the SEC, he disclosed his financial interest in STB to OEC and followed the guidelines set forth by SEC ethics officials to mitigate or resolve any potential conflicts of interest. Additionally, we discovered that although Hinman directed a recruiter to an STB partner in response to his question, this did not contravene the ethics rules or the advice he received from OEC to abstain from all STB-related activities. Hinman's several interactions with STB also did not contravene any ethical guidelines or standards. Regarding the Yahoo address, we found that Hinman prepared and delivered the speech in accordance with the relevant ethical guidelines. Lastly, we found no proof that Hinman's remarks about Ether and the Yahoo address were made for his own financial benefit or that they had a direct and foreseeable impact on his financial interests at the time. How hilarious is this? Jason continued by saying, "It's not surprising that the OIG didn't seek prosecution absent some evidence to the contrary, given that he and his former employer claimed to be unaware of their membership in the Ethereum Alliance. But it's undoubtedly given the impression that impartiality has been lost, and that's what he's talking about. How the OIG was able to ignore that is perplexing, and yes, this is truly a bit ridiculous, but at least we've learnt that these positions need to be more tightly defined. An inspector general in particular should not minimize or justify the appearance of impartiality. Watchdogs, not lapdogs, are what we need." The latter has a history with the SEC governor. Indeed, this is plain absurd. Listen to me. There was a great deal of fraud, as we already know. A lot of manipulation is taking on in this area throughout that time, starting in 2018 and continuing through 2020, 21, and so on. However, Eleanor Tourette also reposted this, so we do have it from her over here as well. As she briefly explained, the SEC Inspector General came to the conclusion that Hinman had not broken any internal ethics or criminal conflict of interest statutes while he was employed by the SEC. Listen, there's been a ton of information about this, and guess what? CryptoLol did reply, and I've included that post below. In fact, the SEC Governor OIG stated that Hinman's 2018 speech stating that Ethereum was not a security would not constitute a conflict of interest even if he had a direct financial stake in the cryptocurrency. It was a ridiculous whitewash, and yes, it is because, listen, I think this is completely absurd. The impact that speech had on Ethereum is already known. Since many individuals are unaware that JP Morgan has developed a blockchain-based service on the private Ethereum network, it paved the way for Ethereum to be widely adopted by large enterprise players and even institutional players like JP Morgan. It's crazy to consider the uptake that surrounded Ethereum and the significant advancements that it experienced from 2018 onwards as a result of that speech. It's crazy. In other words, all you need to do is read up on Ethereum's achievements starting in 2018. Due to this speech, a serious conflict of interest existed here, and even though Johnny Deaton probably won, we still have down here. Actually, this is from Lerziat, Mr. Huber. Take a look at this. The earliest date of this is 2022. At this time, everyone was learning a great deal about ETHGate, but no one was interested in listening. By the way, I believe we have an Ethereum intraday chart. Let's try to pop it up there. That is what I am referring to. As you can see, that was after. So allow me to quickly zoom in. I'm not sure, but the video quality makes it a little difficult to see. The resolution is 720p. I'm sorry if it seems a little rough, but have a look at the market sell-off. Correct. After the lecture, take a peek at Ethereum's price. The SEC is crazy about that. That market action is interesting, isn't it? Whoa, indeed that's a somewhat better view, isn't it? Approximately $39.11 were up 9%. However, this actually came off of the lowest points of about $4,450. The whole cost came to approximately $515. This was only within a day or so. However, the total profit that was made here was about $100. For this reason, insider trading is illegal. Alright, here, markets, news like this. So, listen, how can we not declare this the conflict of interest that it was? I just think it's crazy. I think it's just crazy. However, let's move on to today's actual news, which came from Brad Garlinghouse. As the US adopts a much-needed pro-innovation stance under new leadership, we're excited to be back with Liz Clayman today to discuss Ripple's historic acquisition of prime broker Hidden Road and what this means for the larger cryptocurrency market. The SEC's assault against cryptocurrency is coming to an end, and the sector is moving into the next stage. Decentralized finance integrating with real institutional flows. I'm not simply saying, okay, well, this is a big nothing over here, by the way. No, I believe that the conflict of interest should be disclosed to all. Everyone ought to be aware of the manipulation, in my opinion, and the fraud that has been occurring around the SEC for a while. Although it predates 2018, it also includes the years 2021, 2022, and Gary's whole reign. So the SEC has been one giant farce for the past 6 or 7 years. Apart from that though, let's go on to the interview since some really intriguing things were spoken from this conversation. First up is this clip from Good Morning Crypto. I actually have two, but this one is very noteworthy. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse discusses President Trump's embrace of XRP and the acquisition of Hidden Road. Take a look at this. President Trump has taken significant pro-crypto actions. It must be fantastic for someone like you. But the price of, let's say, Bitcoin, which peaked at almost $107,000 following the election, is far from that now. It has been a market decline, but I believe we are at about $86,000 and change. When do you think this will start to rise again? That's because there have been a lot of irrational predictions that Bitcoin will drop to about $250,000 by the end of this year. Yes, in light of that, your previous guest Larry Fink mentioned just adopting a long-term perspective. I hardly give it much thought in such a short period of time. I consider the macro trends affecting the XRP ecosystem and the cryptocurrency sector. Over the past 90 days, XRP has been the top performing major cryptocurrency. What does that look like over the next 3 years is what we consider. I have a lot of hope. Ripple recently revealed our biggest acquisition to yet, which is actually among the biggest in the whole cryptocurrency market. In the midst of Tariff Palooza on Tuesday of this week, we made the announcement. We're betting on where the world will be in 3 years, not what will happen in the next 6 months, although I'm not precisely sure what will happen with the tariffs. Would you have purchased that item 1 year ago? Firmly no. Look, the attack was a coordinated effort by numerous organizations, including the US SEC and even other Biden administration components. Now we're discovering that more and more. As you pointed out in your opening, the IRS had anti-crypto regulations that were illogical. It hardly makes sense for a bank to even be involved in this sector, and banks were not even permitted to hold cryptocurrency in a reasonable manner without having an equal offset to their balance sheet. It is a legitimate industry. People want to know why the administration didn't pay attention to what customers had to say. The voters' voice and desires were not being heard. A year ago, such an acquisition would have been illogical. But now we're witnessing a major shift in all areas, and now it makes a great deal of sense. It's just incredible. Therefore, it is evident that the market is beginning to open up under the Trump administration and this new secretary, which is something we would all like to see. Do I believe that the SEC has officially eradicated fraud? Not precisely. However, I do believe that for the next 4 years or more, the digital asset area is secure. After those 4 years, we will have to observe. wait and see what transpires. However, given how significant cryptocurrency will be in the upcoming 4 years, I do not believe that it will matter after that 4-year period under current administration. But it's encouraging to see that opportunities are opening up for businesses like Ripple to not just make wise decisions like the recent purchase, but also to develop quickly in the US. It's also encouraging to see that the whole market, not just Ripple and XRP, is becoming more and more accepted. Furthermore, I mentioned in a post I published on April 1st that the US government would soon buy a significant quantity of XRP, which is why this Saturday is the deadline for the US government audit of the cryptocurrency reserve and stockpile. This might be a historic day and moment for cryptocurrency, in my opinion. How the US government would obtain XRP for the stockpile is currently the main concern. The primary conjecture was that the government would accept XRP as payment for the SEC lawsuit settlement. However, we were informed that Ripple had already escrowed the USD settlement sum. The US government would need to openly buy XRP if they were serious about the stockpile. Given the legitimacy it would offer and the attention it would garner, this might be quite beneficial for XRP. As we now know, the US government has stated unequivocally that it would not be buying any cryptocurrency for the stockpile or even the strategic reserve. Actually, they will only use assets that have been seized and confiscated. Stuart Ararati, however, did state on March 25th that they had already escrowed the $50 million required to pay the SEC punishment, as we already know.